These scientists are looking for an animal which is feared all over the world, the alligator. It's a member of the crocodilian family, the crocodiles of the Old and New World. The ancient Egyptians and some cults in India revered crocodiles, but it was a reverence based on fear rather than love. Everybody else has always hated them. The reason goes beyond the fearsome jaws and awe-inspiring teeth. Men have always feared dragons, which are represented as large reptiles. Perhaps there's an ancient race memory behind it all, a dim recollection of the dinosaurs. In all the fear, one thing is overlooked. As a parent, the American alligator is a careful and surprisingly gentle animal. For most of the year, alligators are not gentle with each other. It's noticeable that in most groups of alligators, the members are all about the same size. The reason is simple. Smaller animals either get out or get eaten. Alligators are found in the southeastern United States, from Dismal Swamp, Virginia, to the Arkansas River and down to the Rio Grande. These are in the Everglades, in southern Florida, one of the alligator's great strongholds. They feed on fish, including garfish, another of the principal predators in the Everglades. They also eat crayfish, snails, insects, and anything else they can catch. By helping to limit the numbers of garfish, the alligators do a small service to sport fishermen. Garfish eat the young of game fish, such as bass and sunfish, in large numbers. The alligators are valuable to the rest of the wildlife too. They maintain deep pools in the otherwise shallow swamp, and in dry seasons, when the water level falls, these alligator holes may be vital for the survival of much of the aquatic life of the swamp. During the black days not so long ago, when alligator skin was in fashion and hunting was at its height, the numbers of alligators fell perilously low. Hunting is now more strictly controlled, though poaching is still a problem. The alligator is recovering, and aquatic birds like the limpkin and the innumerable herons which live here have a guaranteed water supply all the year round in the re-established alligator holes. The birds are not completely safe, because an alligator is quite capable of catching one by the leg in shallow water. The limpkin eats its snails on the bank. The other birds have to keep a very wary eye open. A spectacular event in the alligator's calendar is the bellowing of the males, which rises to a peak in May. The little jets of water over the male's back are produced by the vibration of his whole body as he roars. Mating follows soon afterwards. This is a time when the otherwise ferocious beasts seem almost courtly in their behavior. The partners approach each other tenderly, nudging flanks with their snouts. The female selects a male, one with a good loud bellow, and he responds by courting her. Elsewhere, other males are still roaring out their passion across the water. At other times of year, such close approaches are likely to be connected with feeding or aggression or a grisly combination of the two. Alligators are avid cannibals. Many have scars or even missing limbs after encounters with hungry or angry neighbors. The alligator's eggs hatch in August during the wet season. This is when the females show the gentle side of their nature. The babies emerge at night in a nest which is a carefully constructed mound of damp vegetation. It's made of reeds and rushes, and it insulates the eggs from sudden changes of temperature. By fermenting slightly, the nest keeps the eggs warm at night. All the eggs hatch within a few days of each other. The first babies to emerge do so unaided, using a protuberance on their snouts called the egg tooth. Eggs which hatch later get assistance from a quite unexpected source, never before seen on film. The female alligator guards her nest all the time there are eggs in it. This much was well known. What has been discovered only recently is that she actively helps the newly hatched babies to escape, lifting them from the nest or actually cracking the eggshells in her huge but gentle jaws. She releases the babies in the water a little way from the nest. Others, which have already left the egg, might need a helping jaw on their way to freedom. For an animal usually so violent in its reactions, the female alligator is remarkably patient with her young. She guards the babies after they've hatched, keeping them together in the pool and driving off herons, raccoons, or snakes which would eat them. The babies are brightly colored when they hatch, in bands of yellow and black. After a few days, they begin to feed on insects at first, progressing later to snails and occasional small fish. The bright bands of a new baby will fade as it gets older, until at 2 years of age it has become the same dull greenish-black as the adults. Although young alligators are lively and very active creatures when necessary, they spend long periods just floating about in the sunshine, a sitting target for predators. Their mother's vigilance is what keeps them alive. A much greater threat than predation comes from human interference with the water system of the Everglades. This enormous area of shallow, slowly moving water is very vulnerable to disturbance, and a huge variety of animal life depends on it. The Everglades used to be 100 miles from north to south and 60 miles wide, supporting an apparently endless list of creatures. As well as the alligators, there are water birds, raccoons, kites and otters, all interlinked with each other and all responding to changes in the water level. Now the water level is under human control. The water which forms the Everglades floods south from Lake Okeechobee more in summer than in winter. As the giant city of Miami grew up, more and more water was drawn from the Everglades to supply it. Additional canals were cut to control the summer flood waters across land which was once swamp and is now agricultural estates. When rainstorms cause the lake to overflow into the northern end of the old Everglades, flood control gates are opened to release the water into the southern part, now the Everglades National Park. The effect is to save the northern sugarcane plantations from flooding, but at the same time to cause a sudden rise in the water level in the park. To the nesting alligators, this is a disaster, but it's an unnatural disaster created by man. Their life is based on roughly predictable seasonal changes in water level, but to the alligators, man is totally unpredictable. The seasonal changes in water level in the Everglades are part of the alligator's evolutionary background, so that their life cycle is adapted to cope with them. However, when heavy summer rains make it necessary to open the flood prevention gates to the north, the alligator's breeding area in the southern part of the Everglades is suddenly flooded, perhaps to a foot above normal levels. The result is tragic. Alligators live in water, but they are air-breathing reptiles, and their eggs need air too in order to survive. If the nests are flooded, thousands of alligators will die in the egg. In this nest, the normal quota of about 30 eggs is present, but they are all dead except one, which seems to have hatched abnormally early. Inside the dead eggs are the baby alligators within a few days of successful hatching. All have died for the sake of keeping the water off the agricultural land to the north, land which was, until recently, the alligators' province. There's a strong argument on both sides. Ever since Florida became the favorite retirement home for people from all over the United States, the value of agricultural and residential land here has been enormous. As much as possible is reclaimed from the swamp every year. It's this reclamation which endangers the alligator, one of the characteristic animals of Florida. All the scientists can do is to gather evidence to establish the effect of these violent man-made fluctuations in water level. If the floodgates could have been held closed for just a few more days, all these babies would have lived. It's easy to suggest that better cooperation between the alligator's supporters and the flood control people would have prevented the disaster. But owners of valuable plantations and their insurance companies carry a lot more weight than an antediluvian reptile. The loss this year has been catastrophic. Elsewhere, an adult alligator dead from natural causes is being reabsorbed into the food chain through the good offices of a turkey vulture. A considerable body of scientific research has been built up around the Florida alligators, organized by the Everglades National Park. To find out more, the scientists have to subject themselves to some pretty hair-raising situations. Alligators are most active at night, so they must be caught in the dark. Catching the adults is essential if the park scientists are to gather the information they need. Unlike a lot of scientific research, it's a dramatic and exciting business. Once the noose is in position, the alligator can be hauled into the airboat. The noose is often supported inside a rigid pipe to give some protection to the handler. Larger specimens are more safely handled from the bank. The boatmen pass the line ashore to avoid the danger of a capsize in a flurry of teeth and tails. The leader of the operation, Dr. James Cushlan, has devised a relatively safe way of handling angry adult alligators.
Just loosen up.
The first thing to do, somehow or other, is to close the jaws and keep them closed.
Oh, look at that. Why don't you go ahead and do that, John, and then we can...
I've got about 4 calls to make, so I'll be about 20 minutes.
All right.
Is that all right?
Well, let's see what we've got here.
The stickiest sticky tape available has proved to be just strong enough if it's used in sufficient quantity.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
The information that the scientists are collecting is still pretty basic. They want to know the ages of members of the present population, now that it's recovering from years of heavy hunting, and they need to study the movements of the alligators to see how they react to changes in water level. As with most reptiles which grow throughout their lives, an alligator's age can be estimated quite accurately from its length. The blood samples are being taken to investigate the genetics of this population for comparison with others elsewhere.
I've got about 4 calls to make, so I'll be about 20 minutes. All right. Is that all right?
One way to study the movements of the adults is to fix tags to their feet rather as rings are put on birds, so that if they're caught again, they'll be recognized as coming from this place. Brightly colored plastic collars serve to identify the animals even from the air during surveys of the whole swamp. Most field research of this kind is designed to provide answers to a set of really rather simple questions. Even knowing how the weight of the adults varies round the year can provide important clues about their food supplies. Cushlan works on the young alligators too. There's a mystery about them which has puzzled biologists for years. Although the small striped babies are relatively common, it's hard to find young alligators between 2 and 4 years of age. While the babies are under their mother's protection, they're safe. But once they go off on their own, they must avoid the company of older alligators if they are to survive. Where they go is still unknown. Here's a baby apparently out on its own, but its mother is probably quite close by. Cushlan's wife and co-worker Marilyn checks the baby for tags on its feet. There are none, so it's a newcomer to the project. Her aim is to label it to make it easier to follow. The future of all the Florida alligators could lie in understanding the movements of a few youngsters like this. The Cushlans have adapted a tiny radio beacon so that it can be fitted to baby alligators in the hope of being able to follow them in the vast trackless area of the Everglades. The beacon has a small aerial that sticks up from the baby's back. The work done by the Cushlans and their team should help to stabilize the alligator's fluctuating fortunes in its main stronghold in southern Florida. Some of the large adult alligators also carry radio collars to keep a check on their individual movements. It appears that in good conditions, that is when it's fairly wet, they don't travel very far. In very dry weather, on the other hand, they might have to move a long way in search of water. If the water level rises too high, all the predators in the swamp suffer, because the fish which they eat are dispersed over the whole of the Everglades, not concentrated in the deep parts, and they become hard to find. Stability and safety lie in careful control of the water system. The people of South Florida use the alligator as a symbol, and indeed as a source of income. It's not so much the skins nowadays as the alligator itself, as a spectacle which attracts the money. Unfortunately, the alligator side of the bargain is less than satisfactory. However, if tourists will keep coming to the Everglades to look at alligators and bring their pocket money with them, the local people will see that preserving the alligator is worthwhile. The scientists work to preserve the alligators for other reasons, as part of the unique assembly of life that makes up the Everglades. But economics is their most effective tool. Not long ago, alligators were endangered by intensive hunting to provide skins for the fashionable marketplaces of the world. Legal protection and a noticeable change in public taste has enabled the population to recover until the alligator is no longer classed as an endangered species. There is still some hunting of alligators in Florida, mostly to remove animals which make a nuisance of themselves near human habitation. In Louisiana, the alligator, which is a reptile and therefore hairless, is classed as a fur-bearing animal, so that hunters can be licensed under existing legislation. The aim is to take no more alligators than the population can replace each year. Alligators and crocodiles have been hated and persecuted all over the world throughout human history. Now that more people are coming to see them as awesome rather than terrifying, they seem at last to have a chance of survival in the Everglades, where they can live out their unexpectedly gentle lives in peace.